Welcome to the beta version of, actually probably the alpha version of A Miner in Reality V2 Wrath of Khan. Tonight we have a lovely, lovely human being, Gooding, and there he is.
Hey, Mark, good to be here, brother.
Hey, good to see you. Everybody can Google you, everybody can read what's already been written. And what I'd like to do is, so first of all, thank you for being the inaugural guest and putting up with all the shit.
Oh, man.
And welcome to A Miner in Reality. You know the deal here. It's the no bullshit zone. And I think what I want to do is to kind of break this discussion into two pieces. One would be what I'll call your day job. You are a working musician making a living making music, which is something pretty extraordinary in this day and age. Then I want to jump to I want to have a more philosophical conversation, which is really more about why you were put here and what you intend to do about that. So let's start with the for-profit founder side of you. Talk a little bit about, so let's maybe start a little back in the day. I remember getting my Guitar Player magazine in the mail and seeing this young kid with, I think, Steve, who was on the cover? Was it Steve Vai?
Vernon Reid, brother.
Vernon Reid. And I'm like, I wished I could be that kid. So take us back to your story. Give us your origin story, and I'm gonna just let you run.
Oh, that's great. That kid was about 3 feet tall till he was 13, 14. That kid was getting his butt kicked after school. That's the only reason he was nerdy enough to get good at that guitar and get that magazine. It's funny, man. I can't believe you saw that, because that magazine single-handedly kind of changed my life. Not in any financial way, not in any I got signed and had hit records. It gave me that little bit of confidence that, you know how it is, you're fighting at something, you're trying to put your shoulder against the wheel or push against the door, and that little bit of light gets in and you're like, okay. And it also allowed me to start teaching some guitar lessons in the neighborhood, which actually
first income, right? First income.
100%. I was like a lot of kids growing up in the Midwest. I was born outside of Detroit, but the formative years were really in Wichita, Kansas. When I was about 12, my parents had split, and I moved out to Wichita with my mom and my sister. And like every other kid, you're going through plenty of stuff. And single mama, dealing with not having a lot of money coming in, trying to figure those things out. I just figured, like every other kid watching MTV, I'll just become a rock star, buy my mama a house, fix everybody's problems.
Right.
I think we all know it doesn't really work that way. 20 years driving in the van and cooking ramen in the coffee pot of the Motel 6s of America. But, a lot of the stuff that happened then, I think, set me up for some, much later success that I've been really, really lucky to have. And that was, kind of fighting for every scrap. It was unabashedly loving music. And that was a time that it was very sacred. There wasn't, you had to save up your money to go get something. So I was always into rock and rollers that also did soundtrack music. I loved Queen and Flash Gordon. Toto did the Dune thing. Peter Gabriel was a huge influence. He's done, Last Temptation of Christ, that beautiful soundtrack. Prince, maybe not so much a soundtrack guy, but as a kid that was trying to learn every instrument and work on a little 4-track, knowing somebody could play all the instruments was very inspiring, because I was definitely a loner. Lastly, I will cite Mark Knopfler as a huge influence, but those things were just latchkey kid watching VHS tapes over and over. Crossroads, the movie changed my life. I think maybe that's why you said Steve Vai. That was a big deal to me. Quick side story: I actually met Steve Vai and Vernon Reid at the same event just a few years ago, and I'd never run into either of them. And boy, was I a little fanboy. And I mentioned to Vernon, I was like, "You're on the cover of my first little moment of, my 2 seconds of fame." And he actually remembered that issue, so it was really cool. But anyway, I'm just running on here. I was lucky. I found, Dave Grohl talks about it all the time. Just start a band. Don't worry about it. You find good people and you'll figure it out, or you won't. I toured with the same two guys, Billy Driver and Jesse Richenberger, some of my kind of childhood friends, for a decade. And that also made me strong when we were just running down every club we could and trying to figure out, we never played covers, which frankly was probably a mistake, because You got to learn those mechanics of what works and what doesn't. But we were just unabashed in our, we don't care about money. We just want to play music. And that really works until you realize you're living in the Western world and you have to eat and pay rent and yada yada. So I think that leads to, some of the other things we'll probably be talking about later tonight.
Well, so I want to go back to something you said. The notion of, and I can't remember exactly how old you are. I think we're in the same general vicinity of each other.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe we're not. I don't know. It doesn't matter. This whole idea that music was sacred. And
Yeah.
you said was, as in the past tense. So break that apart a little.
Yeah, I mean, I won't grab a cane and go on a diatribe, but it's funny. I watched Daniel Lanois, a hero of mine, as a
Oh
producer.
yeah, yeah. That's a whole sidebar, right? We'll go.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
fact,
for
let's go
sure.
down that road for a minute at some point because
Well,
that's an interesting road.
well, he had a key. He was one of the keynote. They get really love or hate South by Southwest. I think I'm
They're
representing the
great. It's a great play. It's a great thing.
great keynote speakers. Springsteen's done it. Just a really soulful keynote speakers that bring things back to art in the middle of a convention that becomes very, inevitably
Not
business.
about art.
Yeah, exactly. It's, dog eat dog. Everybody's doing their thing. And I remember Lanois said, "There's just so much music. I hope we don't get sick of it." And we don't. When we're chasing something and it becomes about the money, or it becomes about getting it done, or it becomes, you know, a lot of the people I know that were super talented that didn't hang on in this business. It's because these business things happened that made them just not believe. It soured them on everything. And
Yeah.
it's of course when you put yourself out there. I mean, it took me a long time to build any kind of a thick skin to anything. I was definitely a hypersensitive kid, and I had a mom that was dealing with some stuff, and
Yeah.
so I was very much the everything. Anybody, we call it LSD, lead singer disease. Anybody that's writing music, probably you're trying to tap into other things, and so when you first get negative anything, criticism, or you're doing something that maybe, if you're lucky, maybe you're a little ahead of the curve, nobody understands it, or you're behind the curve and nobody's giving you any time to grow. If you let that stuff get in the way of you, Willie Nelson said it, if you know what you're doing is good, try to keep going. And if
Yeah.
you, what happens is a lot of times you start chasing something else, or you start trying to make one person happy. Well, the muse, for lack of a better word, does not, the universe, whatever you want to call it, does not give a, they don't care about that. That is
Yep.
not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be letting things come through, and you're supposed to be putting your whole soul and heart into what you're doing. And I think, even if you fail, then at least you were yourself, at least you put your best foot forward. I mean, the problem with, and I don't even want to call it selling out, because we can do our best work inside of parameters and inside of things that consider the listener and make people happy. But if you are simply throwing everything you know and feel out the window and chasing something and it fails, well, you failed, and you're a jerk because you weren't honest with the listener. So yeah, sacred. I want to try to, and I forget all the time, but this is sacred. I could be roofing a house at instead the sun, at 100 degrees, and I've got a studio now. I'm lucky.
Hey, right quick, we got a question from Skylar asking how you're doing. So I just wanted to throw that into the water.
I'm doing really good. I'm off the road a little longer than normal right now, waiting on the.
Didn't you take a trip with your family here a minute ago?
I just took my first real vacation, I think, since I got married years and many moons ago, and it took about 3 or 4 days to stop being a jerk and feeling like I have no value unless I'm working. And don't worry, it won't become therapy hour at the Apollo tonight.
Hey, we're here to dig, brother. This
Well,
is about the highs and the lows, right?
well, then I'll say it quickly. Anybody that, I mean, look, we all have things we got to deal with when we're kids. Just going through getting to adulthood's its own thing. But depending on your environment, and if you decide you're going to be the person that saves your family, and if you start hiding from something, I'm not going to go into too many personal things, but if things happen to you and you throw yourself into a dream or work, it is very hard to disconnect from that and learn the lesson you have to learn if you want to break that chain and have your own family. It is very difficult to think, the older we get, we have to really make sure we can still change and become and drop those, break those chains. So one of my things that is sort of a holdover from not wanting to face some things as a younger man is I feel I could work my way out of any problem.
Sure, of course.
That is, you become a control freak. The problem is that is you think you know answers that you probably don't just because you want control. And that I think every founder, every person that went after a big goal has a good amount of that in them. But if you can't figure out how to, and I'm still learning, and
Von Chenard talks about the notion that entrepreneurs are juvenile delinquents, right?
so
And so, like, I mean, just look behind you. It looks, I mean, there's your answer, bro. I mean, and rock and roll is the most juvenile delinquent thing you can do, pretty much, right? So you're doing this, and that's the irony of it, right? So if we fast forward to now, talk a little bit about how you earn your living, right?
yeah.
How you pay the rent. I know you tour. I know you've got things you do, but specifically, you've got a company called Kingdom 2. So talk about that.
And I think everybody that tours knows there's about 10 acts that make a profit at touring,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age. Especially if you want to keep putting on a good sized show and keeping people happy, most of what you make out there goes right back into it. Why I'm hoping publishing doesn't go away with AI. I'm hoping copyright holds some kind of value, and writing something has some value. Is that's where I make my living. I've written a couple thousand songs over the years, and a lot of stuff's instrumental. I back to that thing of growing up with a lot of loving, rock bands and pop and all this stuff, but also, jazz and blues, Latin. I also loved instrumental music. I was a huge fan of Hans Zimmer. Rain Man, again, Crossroads, Rain Man, Thelma, all these things where somebody was the underdog and on the road. To go figure. I, I was obsessed with those soundtracks. I listened to them on a loop as I went to sleep, as I woke up. It was either play guitar or, go out and get your butt kicked, come back, listen to, these soundtracks. So I've always, the first second I ever had anything in film and TV, and it was The Matrix and a Matrix. I was like so far back in the mix, special features, like of a DVD made like, a couple $100. But that was one of those crack in the door moments because I was like, okay, my stuff is good enough to stand up in something that is a world that is, and it wasn't even just that the actors were famous. It was, this looks cool, this is cool to me, and I am a tiny little part of it. So
Pause. You said the magic words. This is cool to me.
boy, you're zoning in on what matters each
Yeah.
time here.
Right. Like, so talk about that. So like the idea this is the weird thing about the where art and commerce kind of come together or tear apart. Talk about that part of it.
You know, the cool thing about licensing is, and I got into it when there wasn't, a bazillion channels and the internet, streaming wasn't taking over the
Okay, that's a whole long conversation. Let's not even let's leave
but what's
technology to the side for a minute. Back to
well, yeah, it's speaking to your point. If I'll finally land the plane, is that there are so many places for different kinds of music that what you do, if you put your whole heart and soul in it, and it's not going to be overnight. I mean, most of the people I know that had success overnight burn out pretty quick because there's a lot of stuff you got to. What's it? The character like a photograph is developed in the dark.
Yep.
Somebody said that, and it's really the things you go through will give you sort of the battle armor to get through. Maybe some success coming or figuring out what money means when you get it finally, especially if you've been losing it for decades. But I was lucky that I like a lot of different kind of music, and there's so many shows I was able, because of what we can talk about if you want production music, I was able to get in all these little kind of niche things in the backgrounds in all these shows, and eventually some moments where I'm singing and people are shazamming it. But in general, there was this other world out there that was aside from the labels. It was aside from just kind of begging, borrowing, and stealing, but just doing what you wanted to do, try to do it really well, and just get it in the hands of some places that honestly they get put down because they sell music by the pound. They have what's called a blanket license where
Yep.
shows use these no matter what. But I wrote for a lot of other catalogs, and I eventually had enough music because I ended up after many, many years, after I moved to Los Angeles on a wing and a prayer with, very, very little saved and very little prospects. I kind of networked enough that I eventually got to work with some other composers on CNN International, PBS, A&E. And, one thing leads to another. It kind of takes forever to get the first snowball, but,
Yeah.
if you're kind to people and you do it. Over the years, I had a ton of stuff saved. I met some other artists around the country that were good at this, especially my man Mike G out in LA, who had about 30 records worth of stuff. We pooled it. We kind of made a little union. We pooled our stuff together. We got our own distribution deal.
Yep.
Now we have 300 records. We have some amazing artists that are in here with me. I do less and less of that recording myself now and more focused on charity I founded and my artist stuff and running that company. But yeah, I was really lucky because those what we call slipper checks go out. You're making some money while you sleep. You go out to the mailbox, put your slippers on, open up your check. That money stabilized me instead of playing 4 hours for a few $100 in bars.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I think to me the difference between it is more of an abstract, right? So I spent a lot of time in the music business, and it lives up to its Hunter S. Thompson misappropriated long shallow trench quote, right? Go look it up.
I like
The production music business seems cleaner, right? Deals are easy. The convolution is where all the murk is over here. Over here, it's like, you want to use it? Here's what it costs. Yes or no, right? And so for those who pursue fame, and anyone who pursues it that has not gotten close enough to it to know what it really is, yeah, that's your business. But for those who want to take a vacation with their family and not think about work for a minute, production music, I think, is a much better path, and they're very different businesses in a way. And then weirdly, they intersect in a bunch of ways.
You nailed so many things there. I can't even believe it. I think the fact that occasionally you can tee off and get something really great that makes a good amount of money at once. But in general, it's a long game. You have a good amount of stuff, you stay in it. Because there's not people in there trying to make $1 million overnight. Even besides what you're saying, I'd love to get into the fame thing. Because I used to not take.
Yeah, we'll get there, right? We'll get there.
At my level, and especially my level back then, I had managers that were, you're leaving for 2 days? I mean, that pressure of you have to be on 24 hours a day. Boy, nothing will kill that sacredness like that. But yeah, I think you leave a lot of the Hunter S. Thompson people, the thieves, you leave them out of the equation when you are working with people that aren't trying to make $1 million overnight. So the people that I've met in the production music world, and I will say this to any artist that eventually watch this, what you're building here, which is just going to be awesome. No, I mean,
this is being the first victim.
Everybody's watching this down the road. Like Stephen King said, we're telepathy. By doing this or writing or reading, you're going to see this in another time or place. Yeah. Check out the production music world, because the cool thing about it is it's not a small world. I think it's $1 billion in business, but it's a small amount of, it's still maybe 100 catalogs versus, 1 million labels. And at least with APM, they have about 100 catalogs. And what's so interesting about that is the catalogs that have 300-400 records, you're getting into more rarefied air. And I haven't met anybody that I dislike in the business. It's insane. I mean, I'd like to consider myself a easy enough guy to get to know, but hey, there's people that I won't burn the bridge, but I don't ever want to speak to them again.
Yeah, no, I get it. Look, I mean, here's the thing about that. This is so, you just moved here you're welcome to the South, man, where you're not allowed to right? In New York, the people are walking around pissed off at somebody all the time. Some things are worth going, yeah, and not on my fucking watch. Sorry. Right. Don't apologize for that. That we've lost too much of that.
You're 100% right. And, another one of the old saws that's so great. So the people in New York, nope, not interested. LA, sounds great. To call, never talk to you again. The South, I just don't hear it. And I tell you, that to some degree has proved true in pitch meetings that I've had. This is part of the reason I moved here. We had a sponsor at the time that was working in the South. And if we get into financial literacy, The amount of same day lenders and insanity that happens to people trying to get a foothold in the South is crazy. It made sense to move here to focus on the charity and fight for that. But I will say this is one of the few places that I ever had like a 6 meeting day, and I'm not patting myself on the back. I don't have like 6 meeting days all the time. But I came out here, and of course it's because I didn't live here. Everybody's like, "Oh, he came from LA. We'll meet with him for a second." But it was that thing of you could get around. It's getting harder now, but people were very much yes or no. They were kind. It was really easy. And I still love Los Angeles, but I mean, depending on where you live in LA, you'll be lucky to get to 2 meetings in that.
Hey, so right quick. So also I want to call out our producer Zach. Hold on. I want to call out our producer Zach. It's a $38.2 billion business globally, production music. It's a big business.
So I was speaking to the distributor. Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
I mean to the idea that you could get in this business and do well. I mean, we both know our friend Randy Walkler, who at some point I may be able to cajole into doing this with me.
Absolutely.
Right? He's made a really good living for a long time in this business. So
And 40, I think, what is it, 50% now? They just did the Production Music Association, which is kind of our loose union. They're fighting for us. Great people there. 50% of what you hear on film, TV, and in video games now is coming from one of these licenses. Because, the people they don't have 200 grand to go get, Drake or Beyonce, but there's a lot of other options much cheaper. So, yeah. Yeah.
hey, hold on a sec.
Oh, that's, I keep running my mouth. I mean,
We're figuring out the bugs as we're going here, people. We apologize.
oh, that's great. And I'll say to any artist watching, I mean, the cool thing about it is, I've got 5 records in there that are me playing Latin classical guitar with, eternal reverb settings on them. I got a record I'm really proud of called The Ambient Seas, Hammer Dulcimer, whatever. Now that thing isn't made 5 cents, but where else are you going to put? But it might. The craziest thing about it is 5 years later, somebody puts 10 songs in a documentary, and the other documentary filmmaker goes, "I like the vibe of this. Let me see. Oh, this person has 50 records, whatever." It's just you're playing the long game. But what's interesting about it is, where else am I going to get to feel good about making sad hammer dulcimer and classical guitar music after I've got off a tour of playing the same 10 songs and going 49% me, 51% you, let's rock and roll. It's a really cool way to sort of wipe the slate clean and get weird again with your art.
Well, right, and now we're back to right. So we're back to this, and it's interesting because the idea of setting audio to picture, and the fact that when you back when you were growing up that you were obsessively listening to soundtrack albums is fairly unusual, isn't it? Amongst our crazy musician friends, it
Yeah.
just seems like you're a little bit of an anomaly in a couple of ways. So was that really the engine that led you to production music? As you were out here, playing for 2 crickets at the back bar, and I'll skip the rest of it, right? You went, God, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, I did. Only
Yeah.
I was too stupid to ever come off a stage, though. The one
Well, of
time.
course you were. I mean, dude. So for the record, folks, he was here a couple days ago with his guitar and just ripped some guitar. Like everybody in the room was like, so you're
No,
I'm in the fan club, right? I'm in the fan club. And yet you've found a way. So Kingdom 2, hold on. I want you to talk a little bit about the evolution of that business, right? Because and I want you to talk about you've made a couple of, I'm going to put you on the spot. You made a couple of mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Kind of look at it over its life. What were kind of the 2 big mistakes that if you could go back in time, you would have gone, if I could undo that, or if I could redo that, it would be
There's so many, Mark Montgomery.
Well, I know, but give me 2 big ones.
Well, one is
One.
when I first took like a trip out to Los Angeles, long before I could ever afford to even pile half a studio in a car and get out there and get an apartment. I met with the head of our North American distribution now for my company's name's Adam Taylor 20 years ago. And anybody in the production music world knows Adam. He's really at the forefront of trying to hold the line with value for this side of the business. He offered me some work immediately when I got out there. But I was listening to Prince all the time. He had Slave on his face. Never get rid of your masters. Never
Yeah,
ever
yeah,
get
yeah.
rid of your publishing. I was not a signed rock star with hits. And now, granted, I was playing 200 shows a year. I was a working musician, but I wasn't making 10 cents in the early 2000s from my music. I was just making some music playing live. I was teaching, occasionally some guitar lessons, but I mean, I was just scraping by. And I was like, no, man, I'm going to get the hit. I'm going to get the hit. I had so much music that wasn't doing anything, things I recorded, things the band didn't want to do, rightfully so, that were just weird and ambient, yada, yada. One of the things was and this will kill anybody out there, doesn't matter what you're doing, it was my pride. 100% of zero is zero, friends. When you give somebody some skin in the game, yeah, they're going to take half, which frankly in the music business is a very fair royalty rate. They're going to take 50% because they're out there handling all the things that I was not capable of handling. I opened up at a Chuck Berry show, Chuck Berry's club, Blueberry Hill. And what I would do is I would take if a CD back then or USB key even a little bit later, and I go, I'm going to go around to all the post houses and I'm going to go, hey, I'm opening up for Chuck Berry tonight. Do you want some tickets? Please put my song in your show. Without fail, they all said, we cannot make deals directly with artists. First of all, you're all crazy. Second of all, somebody in the band is going to call me and go, I don't want to be a part of this. But somebody like me who's basically vegetarian, I don't want to do this because they eat veal shake. Whatever it is you're going to be upset about, somebody's going to destroy this deal. So no, we use pre-cleared music. I heard about this on the road. First mistake, should have jumped into it quickly. Second mistake, I was always like, well, I'm not a rock and roller if I'm not only doing this. Good grief. The times that I would go off and work on something and just let things flow, I usually found a song to steal and hold back for the band. If you try to control freak what's coming through, you're going to end up with something crappy. So getting out of my own way was another mistake. Not saving any money was a huge mistake.
We'll get there. Don't go there yet. We'll go there.
Well, how many mistakes you don't want? I got offered to go play guitar, but basically behind where I wouldn't be seen for the band Hanson right before they broke. I had produced a record for, engineered and worked and played some guitar on a record for the guy that got the job for Hanson, kind of as the musical director. And actually, I think they asked me to come out and program keys or something. I was at the time doing a very conceptual record. Let me pull the beard. I can't grow. It's called Get This Load of Crap. And I'm really proud of this record, but get this for a title. Songs from the Unrealized Film Script, Factory Blue. This is how bad I wanted to be.
That's good.
So pompous. I wrote this crappy screenplay just to score my own thing, just a loose idea. Actually, it was People in Goggles in 1999 because they were replacing nature and they wanted to concrete over everything and take the money and still go back and see nature.
Mark Zuckerberg's headed there, brother.
I know, don't get me started. But the thing is, I got in a place with some of that stuff where I was going on these little tours. I was taking these TV sets that were busted and projecting all this animal testing and all these things on it. And I was like, I can't go out with Hanson. I can't blah, blah, blah. I can't sell out my... If I would have gone on that tour, that was a tour where they got on, you name a late night talk show host, you name a festival, that's right when they broke. To have been able to just see the music business at that level, the things I would have learned that I had to learn the hard way for the next decade, beyond the fact that at that time it was $2,000 a week, and I was, losing $2,000 a week touring. I mean, I don't want to say ego, just I was so stick to my guns that the blinders were just becoming a black hole. And, just be careful what you say no to, because you have to earn the right to say no. I get to say no to stuff now, but it wouldn't have taken this long if I would have been a little more open-minded to getting on somebody else's journey from time to time.
Well, look, man, if you think about, now you said a mouthful, right? When you take all of that, right, and you look at, I'm gonna go to the subject. Everybody, it's the second thing out of everybody's mouth now, AI.
Sure.
Right. So I hear you talking about spirituality and channeling and this idea that and just my view of it is it's going to be like anything else or everything else. It's either going to end well or badly. And I think it's largely, I hope it's up to us. It may not be up to us soon, but then none of this will matter for production music or any other music. But talk about, so you're now you're, how long are you got 300 records? You're in this a long time. I heard you have kind of rejiggered your deals, and so you're really in a position of growth.
Yes.
And do you think that this thing that comes through versus what can be created by machines, where are you betting on? Are you betting on the humans here? Or are you betting on the robots?
Well, I think low-hanging fruit. I think things that sound like they were already made by a computer will be the first to go.
I think
And
they're already gone, frankly.
and I think that, I mean, I saw they just launched the new, the first AI hit radio channel. I mean, things that were incredibly auto-tuned and sounded like an amalgam of other things. Obviously, I want to think that, vocal cords and fingertips and, somebody that maybe has I'm talking my own book here, somebody that has maybe a little bit of a different, in my case, rusty, dusty voice. But, things that there's a story, you feel like you have some sense of why the person did it. As far as for production music solely, I'm not scared as a touring artist about, or
Oh
for
yeah.
what I do with the charity of AI. I think it might make us more valuable in the end because we've all died in those rooms in the club learning to hopefully move energy through a room. And that's not something, at least at the moment, that a hologram or an AI bot's going to be able to do. I know some, people have tried it live. But anyway, as far as production music, yeah, I think it's everybody's a little on edge with it. But what we still have going for us right now is that the people that are trying to tell a story and trying to solve a problem, this may go away as you can shout into the, prompt what you want the film to be and it spits it right out. But at the moment, I don't see any music directors or music editors that want to deal with the possibility, even down the road, of a copyright problem. And I know we could get into the weeds with they're figuring out how to circumvent copyright. And I know this one scares me. There's going to be so many copyrights, none of it is valuable. I know there was the person that tried to create an AI to make every melody possible and copyright all of them. Thankfully, that did not work. But I do think that when somebody's trying to finish something by 5 o'clock and they need to get you signed on the dotted line to use your music, at least at the moment, the shows that are worth being in, I mean, of course, all the 20 cents is going away. You're not going to YouTube is going to be, Facebook, this is going to be filled with AI music. That's fine. The things that might pay you a few $100 and eventually back in a few thousand that you might want to be a part of, at the moment, they're holding steady. But, things are moving so fast. I have no way.
How much of that is still relationship based? In other words, the idea, it's different in LA than it is in New York, than it is in Nashville, but there's still a relationship component to this. Describe that a little bit, and talk about like how you've put together a team that is going to be out there working on behalf of the catalog.
If anybody from the production music world is watching this down the road, they're gonna say I should have been interviewing you. That's the first thing I should have mentioned, especially with APM. We have some great relationships with their music supervisors. They know these clients. They've worked with these clients for years. I mean, they dominate MLB, a lot of the sports channels. They're getting all their music from these places, and they sign at the moment. AI hasn't, I think, offered them a solution to where they're going to sign a blanket license to only use AI to aggregate these shows. So right now, they still have huge swaths of them only coming to these 600-pound gorillas that have these great options. But I will say, when you said I kind of, retooled the businesses, I signed direct deals with 24 different offices overseas. So instead of running through BMG and having sort of a middle person for those deals, and no offense to BMG, but quite possibly getting lost in a shuffle of millions of tracks. We're working with these bespoke companies that know their markets. They have those relationships in those markets, and I'm able to call those people up and say with my buddy Carter, who does some of the charity work with me and also works with the company, hey, we're going to get online and present an artist to you. We want to tell you what our next two things coming up are. We are not just trying to put in a million records. We're trying to put in things that matter, that have a story, and they relate to that. They want a story to tell their clients. They have those relationships in London and Germany and Japan. So it's taken a lot of time and a lot of money to do, but we're finally up. We got our sea legs, and we are in a good place, being able to work globally now. So
well, and I think that as you, and again, to me, as you think about the timing of all this, is, and because it could go a couple different ways. The idea that to me, the thing to watch is how long do relationships matter? And
Yeah,
as long as those continue to matter for another minute, it's probably going to be a really good business to be in. Um, if it's the other way, right? Like I can envision prompting, on an editing suite and saying, right, it needs to sound like Star Wars meets like I could, and there it is, and it's like, oh shit, right? Well, then it's fucking game over, right?
absolutely.
Or even worse, you load it all up in and say, as you said, I mean, I should be interviewing you, which is what I'm doing. Shout into the prompt, this is what it wanted to look like. And oh, by the way, here's what the soundtrack should sound like. And it goes, whoop, and then it's there. Then by the way, welcome to the Matrix. And we're probably all wearing goggles.
Well, and I gotta push back on the goggles, but I will say that I think, and we'll be getting into Jonathan Haidt and
Oh,
Tristan
here we go. Let's go, baby. Don't shy away.
and Love. We're getting back to humanity and things being sacred. As we're replacing ourselves, and as we're having a million options, and as everything's happening so fast we can't keep up with it, I'm not noticing anybody having less need for mental health or a walk out in nature or an actual face-to-face conversation with a human. There's young people that I talk to that are scared of it. They're scared of taking the picture with us after the show because they'd rather text, but they want that. We all want that. We're not that different. And so I wonder if there's not an end here where people go, you know what, this is making everybody miserable. And yeah, you're back to UBI. Wow, two companies own everything that's ever been created, whether that been you scraping the internet for all the music or for all the books that have been written or all the et cetera, et cetera. And how many jobs do you replace before you go, wow, this new world we're building sucks? But as far as, to what you said about when they start doing the prompts,
Tell me what you really think.
well, I was getting ready to really go. I represent a
Sorry.
charity that talks to young people about financial literacy. I do not swear on interviews. I will say this, Montgomery. I feel like
I'll swear. I can swear.
I love it. I love it. You say you're saying the things I can't say. I will say this: those prompts. There's still some fear that when it spits out the new thing, until they resolve, and we've got some hope in a couple cases, and we've lost a couple recently. Nashville is actually going to be at the forefront of this. I think some of this AI fight because of its place politically.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could have a whole long story. In fact,
I won't go into the weeds. Until those copyrights are completely ruled against, they can't use those prompts. There's a lot of, you may still try it, and maybe it won't get nabbed by fingerprinting, watermarking. But at the moment, somebody that's going to use something that they hope goes out seen by millions of eyeballs, they're not going to use something that may have a copyright problem. That may change quickly, but I bet on that. I may be wrong. If I have, I've spent a lot of time and money, and some people I love very much running the company with me's time to build a new model XUS. But
well, yeah, but I mean, what are you going to do? Stop? All right. So to that end, I want to pivot,
please.
and I will, in full disclosure, and again, we said it at the beginning. I'm a fan, but I want to switch to the other thing now because I think it's to me. I want to get to that because I think that's the meat of the discussion, and that is all of this has allowed you to do this other thing, and
Yes.
and so. I want to go back to your early story because I think this is where Johnny Appleseed figured out what he was put here to do, right? Or you Gooding in this case. So I want to go back there and I want you to bring us forward now, but I want to talk about what you're doing now, which is so uncool. It's cool. It's so rock and roll. I mean, it's all these things but you're a zealot. I'm jumping to the nonprofit side of you, right? Which is mission work. We're in the South, we'll call it mission work, right? But the notion that you were put here to do something. So let's go back in time and back to Kidville and tell it, and then bring us back now on the other side of the coin.
Okay. Probably the same engine my mom playing classical piano and instrumental music got me enough work later to have the money to do the charity. I think being on the road got me in front of enough other musicians and people to be able to build the catalog. All these things that I thought were mistakes, but as far as how long they took, they taught me the lessons that my family didn't learn either, about money and really about also self-confidence, self-worth, where you somehow think you're supposed to suffer instead of realizing if you're going to help other people or figure out who you are, you're going to have to get a hold of something long enough to be able to think clearly. And when people are in debt, when people are behind the eight ball, when there's, I don't like bullies. I told you I was small for my age. I got picked up at the school dance and put in a little trash can that's straight out of a movie. There's people out there in the financial world that want to help, and there's a lot of people in the financial world where you become just a number, and they end up being a threat to your livelihood. Whether you can get health care, whether you can eat, whether your family lives in a safe environment. If you raise a credit score in a community that's struggling, everything changes. So I grew up without that safety net. My mom worked hard, but we didn't work smart. We didn't, there's a lot of families out there that are unbanked, and it's really easy these days to go, I hate the banks, I hate Wall Street, I hate everything. It's like, unless you were going to move to a forest and figure out how to do everything yourself, if you're going to be in this game at all, you're going to have to create something long term that protects you and your family. As a bleeding heart, do I hope it's the thing that hurts the least amount of people? Absolutely. I think I could even make a pitch that when you become enough financially stable, you have time to think about how your actions affect other people. But as cold and calculated and uncool as it is to say, I am spending the bulk of my time now trying to get a charity that I founded 10 years ago over the top to get other bands on here and reach millions of people, to reach a generation of young people in America. And thankfully, I have a couple of people out there that have made some incredible moves to help this happen. My goal is that financial literacy becomes something every community talks about, because it's not just about money. It's about hope. It's about whether people feel like they can get to wherever they want to go. It's about whether we're going to, as John Hope Bryant says, whether this experiment that's America is going to be able to move on or not. If the rural poor and the inner city folks that don't look like each other, that don't maybe come from the same backgrounds, if they understood how much they had in common, this would be a very, very different country right now. I believe that if you don't work hard, you're not going to get anything anyway. I tell the kids so basically I play a live rock and roll show. I got other bands doing this. My friend Carter Halsey's on the road all the time. We play, then we give a speech about financial literacy. We take questions. We hang out with the students. I say to them right at the beginning after I'm done playing, first of all, I know this is not sexy. It's the least rock and roll thing you're ever going to hear. But to me, it's rock and roll, that you have freedom, that if you work hard, you get to go where you want to go. If you don't want to work, I can't help you. But if you're working hard, you better learn what this game is. If you're going to have a level playing field, you have to know what field you're on. John O'Brien also says he worked with Quincy Jones on this. He was one of my mentors I met a long time ago on this. We got to make smart sexy again. I didn't learn anything at school or in my family. My mother didn't know. Nobody knew. And a lot of the things that happened to us when I was young, that pressure my mom felt of not knowing where things, having more month than money at the end, those formed me. So to finally, get to the point here, it took me a long time.
Having more month than money.
You got more month than you have money to pay those bills. And I feel like what was driving me it took a long time to figure this out. It wasn't just, of course it was, wee, look at me. I feel like a piece of fill this big hole in my heart by getting on stage and putting the spotlight on me. I want to be loved. I mean, of course. But when you figure out eventually who you are, you get to have somebody that loves you, and you can finally get to where you can trust enough to love another human being. And that doesn't even necessarily have to be a family, but it has to be somebody else in the foxhole. When I got to that place and started really being able to turn the rocks over and let the creepy crawlies run around, and folks therapy is never a bad thing if you can afford it. Hopefully healthcare will do more of that.
Stop.
Yeah.
I mean, mental health is as important or more important than physical health. If you don't have it, you're screwed, right? It's something you got to be. I'm grateful for it every day. Like I'm in generally good health for an old cat.
You don't know why you're running into the same walls till you definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And if you have too much pride about it, I would just say to people what a shrink told me once is like, the quarterback has a captain. Like you can still be out there running the road. Somebody has to see the forest from the trees. So one of the things I think I got to the bottom of is I was probably still angry. My dad's side of the family had some money. My mom's family had none. I grew up with her, even though my dad was not a bad guy at all. He drank and had his own issues. But I was in the foxhole with my mom and sister for the beginning, and I just saw too many things happen that wouldn't have. They didn't have to go down that way. So if we can, as one of our friends had just recently said to us, Mark, if you can move the compass even just this much for a
Yeah.
student, it's at that age, and that's also, as cold as this sounds, that's how interest works, folks. If you start young and you put it away, and that's part of one of the things we talk about is even if these folks feel, and I get it, they don't want to bet on their future selves. They don't see a future. That's why you get violent. That's why you join a gang. That's why that's why you want to be around other people that are struggling. You don't see that way out. But if you can see how the numbers work, if you can understand that that little compass moving then not only changes maybe where you see yourself and how much confidence and self-worth you have, it also, your greatest asset as a young person is time. And that's for your money as well. If I would have been putting away even 1% of those licensing checks when I started and letting them compound, I wouldn't have had to live in that van as long as I did. So,
Well, okay, so the talk about the genesis of the charity. So let's fast forward into the future. You're making a decent living. I've been to you have a nice house. You've got a wife. You've got a son. You're living a decent middle class lifestyle as a musician, which not a lot of. I mean, look, at the end of the day, let's be real. And we can go there, right?
where you
Famous
want.
people are not always,
Oh,
the trappings of power are easily acquired. And
sorry. Spring.
so like it's a business of illusion anyway. So the let's talk about this whole notion of um I mean it is I'm trying not to use words like destiny or but you have a mandate. It seems to me you have a mandate. Like why in the hell, like when I first met you,
Mm.
my first question was why, like you're doing this at your own detriment. Why are you doing this? Unpack that. What is it underneath this? And I think it goes back to to your earlier life. But what is it underneath this that makes you want to do this and makes you want to take it? You've been in front of over 300,000 kids, right? How many shows? How many states?
36 states. I think we're at 700 shows. I played the first four or 500 of them, and then Carter and a couple other
You
bands.
added, yeah, and you got another, yeah. So talk about the genesis of this and kind of I know when you and I started talking about this whole idea of the bench, a pilot, and then scale. You proved it on the bench, right? It's road tested. So talk about where you're headed in terms of. So talk about first the bench, right? How that works, how it's worked. Obviously, we'll push people to all of your socials, etc. But talk about being on the bench and getting it right, and then talk about kind of where you see it going from here.
Well, and getting it right answers that first question, which is always the tough question for people like, why you do this? What's the angle? You're working at a bank. You got a bank spot. This whole thing's about a bank. This whole thing was created by a bank. You're making millions of dollars doing this. I show you my tax returns, man. This thing costs.
Is that really an angle people think?
Well, I don't think they think that, but I've had the press asked a few times, like, if we were sponsored by Raymond Jones.
I
Oh,
mean, look,
when
let
they
me.
go,
Maybe I'm going to short circuit that shit right now.
well, they never, sorry, they
Bank
never asked that after.
the banks are your logical partners. I mean, I think that's what you learned on the bench. One and two. By the way, not all banks, right? To your point, there are payday lenders. There are people who are predatory, and that isn't what you're talking about. Uh, it, a bank like First Horizon or a bank like Pinnacle or a bank. I mean, pick a bank. They want you to put money in there And they're going to treat it well, and it's going, I mean, they're going to help you compound that interest. So they're not the enemy.
Absolutely not. And I gotta say, you come from that perspective. It's very easy to launch into the victimhood and go, okay, everybody's my enemy if they don't think exactly like me. And that's a mindset of poverty. It's a mindset of failure. I had to dig out of it myself, from my childhood. But I will say that I have met some extremely soulful people that work at large banks that have sponsored these shows they're getting absolutely nothing out of the show. They're working in communities that are 100% free and reduced lunch. They're working in communities where no one anytime soon, I know some of them will, because I know some of the people that change this world come from nothing. But these you're not supposed to say nothing, underserved communities, 100%, they are not going to get clients at Raymond James by playing a school in the middle of Mississippi where 30% of the kids aren't showing up, some of them are fighting, et cetera, et cetera. They are doing this because they went, you know what, I have some success. As I always say, I have a mic now, I better use it. They see that we found something. The light bulb went on for me, and this will answer the bench question. That music makes the medicine go down. The light bulb went on for me that, oh wow, it feels better to finish a show in front of 300 kids than maybe opening up a festival. But God, I love those too. But drunk person screaming, play Freebird versus a kid asking me a question that I wish I would have asked when I was 12 or 13 and becoming. You think you're the breadwinner of your family at a very early age. You short circuit some of your own childhood worrying about these money issues. And you do it without anyone at a family or necessarily a mentor or especially a school talking about it. Your chances of figuring it out by yourself, unless you really read or run into somebody, even with YouTube and all the things that have changed, getting out of that mindset is difficult. We get to use music to open up the room. It's a full show. We bring all the lights and sound. We bring everything. We bring, tour managers that have toured with some of the biggest acts.
Oh, yeah. Can I stop you here? Because I want to put a fine point on this. Back to what we were talking about earlier, like, what's your angle? Why are you doing this? You must be making a ton of money, right? Of course, everybody's going to think that. When I was as I got to know you, and I'm like, I just have to go see this, and you're like, hey, we're playing up the road at blah blah blah, and I'm like, I'll be there. I walked in not really sure what I was gonna. I thought it was gonna be all these kids going like this, like, oh, we got a free. They gave us a free hour, and when we get out of here. And what I saw was the opposite. The show was fucking great. And I do appreciate the nod to our mutual love of Queensryche. Right in the middle, baby. And yet I walked away going, okay, I got it. I totally get it. Right. You create a moment where you call yourself, you talk about this concept of we're other. Talk about that.
So, the one great thing about the phone.
It's weird because this is fucking alchemy, right? This doesn't sit on a spreadsheet. This is alchemy.
We work in magic and mystery. It's the sacred stuff. It's the music. I mean, my favorite thing about this charity is sending a hip hop band out to the smallest town in Wyoming and sending me to, downtown Detroit, sending me somewhere where the cats don't look like me. And people, the one good thing I could say about phones is because young people have seen everything, they sense whether you've lived it in 3 seconds. They sense whether you're being authentic or trying to sell something before you've even opened your dang mouth. So the thing about it, I think why, it works is we are other. I mean, in their minds, they can tell if a band is driven through the night to get to them. And, it's one of my company lines in the pitches as we try to, get this thing rolling and find the right backers. We love playing Los Angeles and New York, but we're not going to put a band on this charity. And I know Carter, I've seen him play 100 times doing this, and all of our shows. I am just as excited, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, to go try to win over a crowd in Grable, Wyoming, or Macon, Georgia. Any artist out there that loves playing live knows this. You're still a little nervous, even if you're playing for 10 people. And all those nights in front of, as you say, 2 bar backs and a cricket, That's where you learn your craft. That's the real bench, because the kick drum, it's going to fall off. You have to kick it with your foot. I've had you play on a broken leg. The two strings are broken. So I grabbed another guitar from the other band and I started trying to play two of them at once, and that became a shtick. Now I do a thing. You figure out who you are through all those bad nights. So hopefully when you get into an environment where you're in the middle of nowhere and I play my hypey film to the students to show them, look, oh, you must hang out with Robert Downey Jr. He's got music in Iron Man. I've never met Robert Downey Jr., people. But you get a little bit of that credibility, but there's still a lot of them. The headphones are on. They haven't heard of the band. It's the rougher the school, the more underserved the school is, the more they're like, God dang it. They want to believe in something because nobody's coming by, but it's also like, hey, prove it. Nobody's paying any attention to me, so prove it. To feel that energy change because of music. And I got to say, I'm not patting myself on the back. As long as it's a band that has gone through enough of those at-bats and gone through those situations of winning a crowd. And that's all you want when you start. You just have to, how do I get these people to believe in the same thing for 30 minutes, an hour and a half? When you watch that change, people feel it. They go, oh, yeah, I like this. And then the person that thinks that person's cool, like Willie Nelson said, just find one face and connect and let the light go out. Once we do that, we've got, the speech is 20 minutes, and it's all in there. Every pillar, every foundation of financial literacy is wrapped in there. We do it through some stories about people that entertain business, influencers, things that are going to relate to those students, which are, hit them where they're at. And then we'll stay as long as they want if we don't have another show to talk to them after. And the stories I hear, Montgomery, from, I've seen kids come and ask us for food backstage before the show. They don't have any at home. I've seen them tattoo stuff like valuable on the arm. Nobody at home's telling them that they are. I've seen same-day lenders. Folks, if you don't know what a same-day lender is, and I work with so many, I guess some amazing banks that have done so many amazing things, but even my banker friends are like, wait a minute, I didn't know that that's what that was. Do we invest in that? 1,300% interest for loans to people who don't have any money. They borrow $100. It says 10%, pay it back. That's fine. $110. That's fine. They break even at like 30 or 40%. These are dangerous loans. But 1,300% interest from somebody that's borrowing the money because they've got a broken car window.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, and there are all kinds of other versions of that. When I was in college, I was lured into a Sears credit card with 24% in. I can't remember what. I ended up paying more in interest than I paid for the shit I bought, right? Yeah. And it was like, okay, I got it. Like, cut it up, and it took forever to actually, for me, the secret weapon that I think is really underrated is just the notion of no debt. Just don't be in debt alone is a whole other. Now, I know people will say, well, you need to use this sophisticated financial instrument and blah, blah, blah. And then one day you wake up and the whole thing blows up and you're staring at the crater, and they're coming to take your house. I'd rather just keep a lower profile and own all my shit instead of, build. Anyway, that, by the way, is where fame. That's where, I mean.
Yeah, you brought it back, and you live in founder world, you've made deals, incredibly sizable deals with companies and charities and things like this. These are I think the terminology in your world would be burn rate. I say to the students, this pocket, I'm gonna get you halfway there right now. Don't worry about all the stuff. You can learn all the intricacies, and believe me, there are plenty of financial instruments that I think some of them are purposely, the fine print is a little difficult to read, but this pocket's what you got coming in, this pocket's what you got going out. If you are spending more than you're making consistently, money's not good or bad, but our lack of knowledge about it hurts us. You're going to suffer. And if you're suffering, the people around you are suffering. It's just one of those things. You're not going to be able to get to where you want to get if you don't think about some of this stuff early on. And if they don't get the message in a way from somebody that they think is other, not their parents, not their teachers, not, a banker, even though they mean well, they bring us on stage, but not somebody necessarily that's wearing a suit and tie. If they don't get it in a way that convinces them, it's every year that goes by that they don't learn this is more of a chance they're never going to catch up. At speaking to your point about interest, and that's buy now, pay later. That's rent to own. That's you want to talk about a few $1 billion business. That's coming from people who don't have any money.
Yeah. Hey, I want to go back to something you said and just not to encourage people to go off on a tangent, but there's this great Derek Sivers has this great post about how do you learn leadership from a dancing guy, and he says basically you find one crazy fucker, right, and then there's two of them, and then there's 10 of them, and then right, and I think today that's what the kids call going viral. So you are now at this moment where as the charity continues to evolve, talk a little bit about how you're thinking about the next couple of years. In other words, you've
Yes.
got the bench. It's a well constructed generally idea. It seems to work. Talk a little bit about on the other side. So you do some work around not analytics, but you're effectively surveying these kids on the way out the door. Talk a little bit about the stickiness of it, right? In big buckets. And obviously for anyone who's really interested in this, there's more information on your website, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too far, but from an analytics perspective, you're measuring this and you're seeing what?
So fundingthefuturelive.org, folks, our 990's on there, everything's on there. What we're seeing is, they have a QR code they grab with their phones, we give out postcards, we tell them during the speech right after we play, hit us up. We would love, I'm going to be in a long drive through Montana. It may take me a minute, but I'll get back with you. DM us, ask us questions, but let the charity know how we're doing. There's 3 questions on there. I give them the answers. It's about compound interest. It's about IRAs, believe it or not. And what we're doing is we're getting some information on, what they felt they knew about financial literacy before and after the show, what they thought of the show, what they thought of the artists. I mean, everything. It's no holds barred. And we have now thousands of these comments. I get to also, the joy is going back years later and getting to talk to some of these students about that, compass moving a degree or two. But we hear, we've also played some schools where there's credit unions built into the school and they're nonprofit, and we watch the students open the savings accounts after the show. So that's some immediate gratification. But we're in the next 2 years, obviously, we're always trying to raise more money to keep more bands on the road and to not be going backwards financially to do it. But we also are looking to improve how we collect that information, collecting that information that is, of course, safe and something that the schools feel good about, but making sure that the teachers will do some of these exercises after we go, finding the right partner to come in, since, as you said, we're the squishy middle. We are sort of that teachable moment. We're trying to make smart sex again. We're trying to show them, hey, a rock band, while it's cool, or a hip hop band, whatever it is, we got the hour we're playing music. The other 23 hours of the day, yeah, we keep a budget. This is still a small business. We got to pay for hotels, gas, fuel, tour managers, lawsuits, social media, yada, yada, yada. We want to be able to prove that they're getting that message, and we're doing that now. We're seeing, we're seeing in those comments. The thing that's really important to me is that this becomes a kitchen table issue for communities. Look, if a student's it's a well-to-do family, that's great. I tell the students that are going to inherit some money, rock and roll, you got a chance to make a difference. And by the way, generation or two, that money's gone if you don't start thinking about it, because your expenses will always rise to meet your income if you don't think about it. I used to live that way. But as far as students that are struggling, it's like, look, some of us got a home run. We're going to inherit, some people inherit tens of millions of dollars immediately. Some people have less than nothing. Your greatest asset is time, but also, if you will do some of these things, it's what you're talking about too. I mean, I say you could drive a car from New York City to Los Angeles in the dead of night with just a little bit of headlights. You're going to attract those other crazy people. You're going to weed out your garden full of people that are going to drag you down. If you're making a plan young, it's going to be a completely different life. I mean, you set those things into motion, it's going to be a completely different life. It was for me. I stumbled a lot along the way, but because I had one thing that I had some hope for, and I had a couple of mentors that told me, you're pretty good at guitar, why don't you try this? Or you're a movie soundtrack dork, why don't you take all that weird stuff you record and try to license it? I ran into mentors. We're trying to be mentors to them, hopefully, as we start busing in schools, or at least doing larger and larger schools, a few thousand at a time. We want those artists, through that speech and through a show that makes them believe. Before we talked, and kick me off stage if I talk first. You know how far crazy this gets. I think we could be a mentor long enough for them to go, wait, somebody cares about me. Somebody who's made some of the same mistakes was able to find a new way through it. Maybe there's other people like this. Maybe these books this guy's telling me to read. By the way, Derek Sivers comes up on multiple fronts. Nice one.
Oh, dude.
Maybe, and at the end, let's do a little, what are you reading? Because those, when I watch a podcast or that's always one of the, but if those students can feel for 2 seconds that somebody understands that it's really freaking dark out there right now, that whatever it is, and this goes to a lot of different issues they're facing, and they talk to us about things that don't have anything to do with money, but it's all the same thing. How do you believe enough in yourself to think long term? How do you make a few shifts in what you're doing with your life to where you're not going to end up without healthcare? You're not going to end up in a community that has such a low credit score that the doors are, triple locked. These things all feed into one another. And if you're lucky, if as lucky as I am that, and you said it, man, I live a middle class life. I actually have some money saved, and I wouldn't have if I wouldn't have learned this stuff young enough. I was 30 freaking 3 years old before I even heard what an IRA was, or I was out of college before, went on a Pell Grant, and I left a little early to join the circus, but I didn't know what a credit score was. I had no idea. But, I actually, I'm doing well enough. I don't need $100 million. And you know what, to anybody that does, good for them. I mean, look, I love Warren Buffett. Get up to 100 million, kick off 50 million of it. The power you get with money, it's unreal. In an unchecked capitalist society, it's the biggest power you can have. But I wouldn't have felt, I had some offers to do some things in publishing, to run some companies, to do some things that would have been much more lucrative than taking the long road. But as our man Daniel Lanois says, short road will make you sweat, long road will make you, long road will make you sweat, short road will make you bleed. And the short road would have been taking those payoffs. And that's not against anybody there's people that can run companies a hell of a lot better than me. You know that, working with me. I'm a head full of bees half the time. But nothing makes me as happy as getting lost on stage, and I didn't realize that the thing that would make me equally happy, because I was not a public speaker. I came into this simply by going, hey, I want to go back to my old high school after I met John Hope Bryant. I want to tell him some of the things that I learned, that we talked about. And I can tell, if we have time, I'll tell you a quick kind of funny origin story of how the future started. But I just want those kids to see what I didn't see, and it feels really good when the light goes on. So
well, that and so back to this notion of the fact that you're other, that you are, that you're this sort of it's the alchemy, it's there's an opening, and then so to give everyone who doesn't know how this works context, you kind of flip around, you run a reel of all these things that you've built in your other founder role in the commercial business, and then you come back and you turn into really an evangelist, and you talk about something super uncool theoretically, yes, right? And then that occurs, and then at the end you've got, instead of kind of back to, I thought they would all be going like this, and it wouldn't, all that stuff, it would, the music would be whatever, and then they'd all leave. The opposite is happening, and they're not talking about the music, they're talking about the financial component. So if you were to look into the future 5 years and say, okay, so now we're through the pilot stage, what is success? What's the big, hairy, audacious goal of the organization? What do you want to see happen as a result of the work?
What I know to be true needs to be exponential and magnified. I know that we run out of posters because we can't sign enough of them, and I'm not patting myself on the back. It happens to Carter Halsey. It's happened to other bands we've had. This format works, and I want to see I want to see more bands playing to more people, to the degree that this does become a grassroots conversation, that there are some requirements for financial literacy in high schools. I've started to see, when we get enough shows, we come through a community enough times. We've been through Atlanta playing one-offs forever. We went down to Miami a few times. And all of a sudden, the Secretary of State of Georgia talked to us, and we are on the, Georgia's website is one of their 3 only programs that they're sponsoring. We've now played, I think, 40 shows in Atlanta doing this. We played the Arts Center twice, where Laura Steckler with Raymond James, thank you, bust in the entire school district, and the superintendents came. I've worked with mayors, we've worked with 2 governors. That only happens because we've been on the ground. Enough people are talking about it. They go back to their families. Thankfully, these banks there's a lot of people I met at the banks that are like, we're not sure what to do. We want to do more, and we're not sure. And the light bulb went on for me when John Hope Bryan had invited us out to just talk to kids in inner city Los Angeles. And I said, hey, can I bring a guitar? Because he asked me as a publisher, and I said, yeah, let me try a little experiment. And I just said, hey, before I tell you what I think you should know and give you my spiel, name a genre. And somebody said hip hop. So I played a little bit of a Run DMC lick that they probably didn't remember, and then I just played a beat and beatbox. And then they said polka, and then they're trying to stump me, and they said, nobody said Latin, but I played some Latin sad music. To see them go, oh wow, music in the room, and it still happens with students now who go, man, I've never heard a rock band in my life. I didn't realize this is something I like. I saw music open that room up. That then when I said, here's all the mistakes I made, please put away some money, please tell your parents. I saw that work. So my hairy audacious ask is, if we have, I imagine it will probably be a bank, because they get this and they see what happens in communities where people aren't investing. And I always say to them too, I say, find a local bank, find a credit union. But even some of these larger banks, if that community's unbanked, that community's in trouble. It's just a reality of how this works. I want to see the kind of backing where we can have multiple bands doing this, where there's 9-10 shows a day. I played triple show days. We could have 5 days a week, even a handful of bands playing double days. We're going to be able to reach millions of students in a short amount of time. And I know enough people on the road. Carter knows enough people on the road. We're running into enough people. It's rare that you find a lead singer crazy enough to want to go give that speech that came from that situation, but they're out there. And, we got to clone ourselves, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
So what's the BHAG?
What's that?
What's the big hairy audacious goal when you're done? What do you want it to be?
I don't want financial literacy to only be something that people that went to the right class in college or had somebody in the family that built a business or was a banker. It shouldn't only be those kids that hear about it, because there's nothing about politics or religion or anything that doesn't fit in a public school here. But I do, and I'm not, again, I think I name checked a billionaire who does an amazing amount of things for the world, Warren Buffett. But I got to say, if the worst thing that happens is you have millions of more students who instead of buying a $1,500 iPhone, they have a little tiny piece of Apple. If they're part of this American experiment, if you have a few million extra kids that have an IRA, maybe a billionaire only made $970 million, but I get these bands and this charity get a few million kids from 0 to 100,000, where it is proven that the quality of your life changes in every single way. Your family has a better chance of staying together. Your stress level goes down. I mean, I think Scott Galloway said this, the resting blood pressure of students, in a family that is not worrying about money is literally lower. Credit score for students that are in 550 communities, 550 credit score, their lifespan is 61. They get that up to about 700. By the way, you're within 15 minutes. If you're in an area that is a low credit score, usually there's a community within 15 minutes that's getting into that 700. We have butted up poor and rich all across the country. Those students those families live to 81 is their average lifespan. So whether I like it or not, money is life in America. I'm a songwriter. I wish love paid the rent, but that hippy dippy stuff ain't gonna cut it. So my hope is that millions of students will learn enough about this to protect themselves and their families long term.
Cool. So I want to do two things, right? I want to do a little bit of you brought this up, so I'm going to put this kind of back in your court. What are you reading? And I want to do that. This comes out of this classroom environment that I've been working in and around this idea of what is a minor in reality. That's its own show. But the last question that we always asked in the room, and you were kind enough to come and do this in person with us last semester, is if you could give yourself a piece of advice at the age of the average kid in that room, and which was going to be 20, 21, what would it be? So let's hit the reading list, right? And then I'm gonna pause you, and then we're gonna do the big we're gonna do the big ending,
Love it.
and then we'll figure out where we're going from there.
So you said, what am I?
Give me the last three books you read, and I got to think about what the last three I read. Okay.
Perfect. Well, let me give you, and you do the same because I always want to know what
Mhm.
you're suggesting to people. But let me give you what I'm reading and what I think that people read. Because what I'm reading, I went on that vacation. I got to go to Bangor, Maine. You know who's
Ah,
Maine? Stephen King, ladies and gentlemen, the Gerald Winters bookstore. I tracked this guy down and got a little meeting with him. He had first editions. Here's how cool Stephen King is, folks. This guy's bookstore, he sells all things Stephen King only. And there was a flood, wiped out all of his first editions, all of his stuff from the movies. He has the standpipe, the thing from It. The city gave him that's in the corner. It's crazy. It's a total Stephen King lover's paradise. But he lost everything. Stephen King called and said, "I'm having the publisher send over some boxes of books." And Stephen King's son sent over manuscripts. They kept this guy in business. So the last three things I've read is all the missing Stephen King on the vacation. But as far as things I would say to people, Derek Sivers has written a brilliant book about creative fame, getting to the things that I wish we had more time, that you're getting at with the real price of fame and how hollow things can be. If you're not doing it for yourself, if you're doing it for somebody else, it's going to eat you eventually. And he's got some great books on just philosophy and how to break things down and how to run businesses. Whatever you hate to do, somebody else is great at it. That was a lesson I had to learn the hard way because there's so many things I am terrible at. Anybody that came here or that's here down the road interested in music publishing, my old attorney, brilliant, Steve Winogradzki, wrote a book where the contracts are in there, folks. And this is why I love production music. Most of the contracts are the same. It's one of the few times where there's no games in what you're signing. These are the rules. You can you can play or not.
straight ahead. It's an easy deal to do or not.
And don't do it if you don't want to do. You got
Don't want to do it. Don't do it.
Going to music. I get no money from any of this things. I'm telling you, Steve Winogradzki, music publishing, 2 financial literacy books. I may even be missing the title, but the last 2 books that Scott Galloway and John Hope Bryan, my mentor and one of my heroes, have written have been about. John's book is called Financial Literacy for All, and Scott Galloway's book is called, I think, The Algebra of Wealth. And both of those books are a blueprint for all the things we're talking about today.
Well, that's cool. So I'll go. I got two. So I'm currently reading Tom's Lake. Previously, I just finished, and I can't remember the name of the book. Zach can probably get it before I'll describe it. It's the whistleblower Facebook book that is shut down. And before that, I reread The Art of War for the 30th time.
Yeah.
And a recommended reading for me is, anything Seth Godin's ever written is pretty great. I mean, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the question of the day, which is, if you could advise your younger self of something, and I'm not sure we have gathered all the audience demographic information, although I'm sure somewhere in the cloud it's already been recorded. If you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I don't remember who I stole this from or I would attribute it. Never compare your inside with someone else's outside. That works for music, it works for money, it works for the person you think you're never going to be able to be friends with. Naval Ravikant, the philosopher I know.
Oh yeah, oh man, yeah, he's the man.
They wrote, and I don't know if he gets some money from it, but somebody compiled. I used to print out his stuff.
Oh, dude, yeah, no, got it. Yep.
And one of the things he says is, no one can compare with your true self. And when you're worried about what everybody else is doing, you're not working on your true self. You're not listening to spinning your own wheels. All back to the spiritual in the deep end stuff. You are not going to be in a place even to see, as I missed, so many of the opportunities where you might not make a lot of money there, but you might grow. You might not get something overnight, but you're going to figure out a key to a puzzle that's going to skip, Willie Nelson again. I'm just going to keep name checking him. You want to go to the top. I talk to Craig Morris, who put us together, about this all the time, man, because he's played and sung with everybody. I'd be surprised if he's not on here tonight. I know we're going to talk about this. You don't want to do it ladder by. You want to skip to the top rung of the ladder. It's crazy. So, but that thing of figuring out who you are is going to come with pain. Another thing Naval said that your CV or your bio is just a catalog of your suffering. So, do that hard work. I would say to myself as a young person that, yeah, they're not going to compete with your true self. And another one I think of a lot is I was so anxious to make sure everybody felt okay because the environment I was in was a little crazy. And so I try to save everybody and everything. And if everybody's your family, nobody's your family. Sivers, when you aren't clear, there will be pain. Yeah. And even to this day, I find that I try to be nice and not say what you mean what you say, and you're going to have a better team. They're going to respect you more. They're going to do what you need to do, and they're going to make more money because you're going to not be an idiot and make the wrong decisions. I could go on all day on my problems with leadership style, which I've been sanding some of the or making some rough edges in my case.
Well, so let's do this. Zach is going to turn off the YouTube live broadcast.